And in Asia, it is Friday afternoon, the 8th of November, back in California and other places. Welcome to our Sutra lecture, our Dharma talk, not really a Sutra lecture, on the biography of Master Empty Cloud. We will be getting underway directly. I'm going to ring the bell 3 times and invite folks to make a half bow from wherever you are, if you care to join. Here we go. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Okay, now today Gao Lifang is going to request Dharma. So, Gao Lifang, if you'd like to request Dharma, please go ahead. 请你现在开始。
恭请大德僧听，为此法会集一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐。速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize numbers.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi samya sampatoshe.
Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi samya sambuddhoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay, Gao Lifang, and I, all the way from Shanghai, we had our Dharma request. Sam, you want to turn it on? It's going to get too hot. Let's see what we can do. Yeah. We are balancing our air conditioning with too much ambient noise. So if you all hear a rumble in the background, it's so that we could survive the heat here in Queensland. So we would like to acknowledge country and to say, it's not the Pomo people this time, it's the Kombumeri people of the Ugambe language region, who are the traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where the monastery is located. Pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. 就说我们恭敬地承认Ugambe语族的孔布马里人是我们寺院所在地的传统叙事者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬，并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民致敬。Excellent. And we've got a bell song. Here we go. We, for a long time, we didn't do the bell song, but we're back. Here we go. Bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000劫内，佛法扬满一国中，共训起法界和平，利益报他诺后德。Okay, done. Let's put that away for now. I noticed that we're only half as many as usual, and why is that? It's because of our time change. And we want to, we understand that people will get used to the new time bit by bit. So what happened? Here in Queensland, the time doesn't change. 12:30 last month is 12:30 this month. The rest of Australia does daylight savings, just like the United States does. It's just Queensland, our state, does not. So that's how it goes. Meanwhile, if you're listening from the US, it's 6:30, not 7:30. So there will be a number of folks tuning in 1 hour and say, where's the lecture? Well, sorry, we have to look for the new time, 6:30 in the US. Here in Asia, 10:30 reliably, 早上10点半 is 12:30 here in Queensland. So that's the issue. When we're back in the spring in the US, we'll continue at 7:30 as before. Okay, 如果各位愿意听一个流利的普通话的翻译的话，那个你的软体的控制板的右下角就有 interpretation 那里就可以找到 Chinese， 然后我们有义工很发心翻译我所讲的英语，翻译流利的普通话。Vietnamese translation is available right there in the chat box. Click on that link and it will take you there. Likewise, if in the future, even next week, you would like to request Dharma, we have an opportunity. Send an email to the email address that will pop up in the chat box any minute. And there it is. And click on that, and then you too can create the seeds for future wisdom and early connection in your life with the Dharma. Because in the past life, you requested Dharma, making it possible for others to discover wisdom and compassion. All right. Let's see here. Oh, we're up to 50 folks instead of our usual 120. Yeah, those time changes are tough, aren't they? So our host is in Fremont, California. Our translators are right here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. Let's see here. Our Dharma requester was in Shanghai. Brian is in Campbell. Celeste's in Hong Kong. Let's see. Friends from Tracy, California. Where else? Berkeley, Indonesia, Jakarta, Malaysia, Beijing, Singapore. I love it. St. Petersburg, Taipei, Manila, Philippines, Calgary, San Jose, Singapore, Seattle, Oklahoma, Ukiah, Pingdong. Hey, Wade is listening in. Hey there, Wade. See you next month. Willie is here. YC is here. Yihuan is here. Where else? Let's see. 包头内蒙古黑龙江哪里？还有北京悉尼、哈尔滨鸡西、北京苏州哇，哈尔滨黑龙江。Let's see here. 深圳、北京、哈尔滨哇，东北人多。新加坡、南京、珠海、上海黑龙江 and 苏州。Good. Welcome everybody. Glad you're here. Let's see. All right. Now, if you look at my desktop, what are you seeing? This is an 1858 sketch of the Great Golden Pagoda, Da Jin Ta, also known as Shwedagon in Burmese. So that's what it looked like to a British colonial artist back then. Our pilgrim is traveling on foot to places that I have never been, and where many of us maybe heard about, but never imagined what it would be like to walk on foot to Tibet, crossing the Himalayas. So that's what our grand teacher, Master Empty Cloud, is about. Last week we went quickly over the Potala Palace. I want to say a little bit more about that. So we're going to repeat last week's final visit, which is right here, arriving at the Potala Palace in Tibet. So let's repeat this one, look at some photos, hear some stories, and then move forward. Ready? Here we go. 入西藏境，过乌苏江，越拉萨河。这不是经典，不必合掌，这不是佛的声音，这是上人的声音。即首都拉萨，全藏正教中区，西北布达拉山，有高13僧之布达拉宫，殿中庄严，金碧耀目，达赖喇嘛坐床之所。有喇嘛僧2万人，有格尔、别棒、四拉等寺。So the master, that's Master Empty Cloud, entered Tibet, crossing the Wusu and Lhasa rivers. Lhasa is the capital, as well as the administrative and religious center for all of Tibet. The master walked northeast to Potala Mountain, where the 13-story Potala Palace is located. The halls are adorned with shining gold and jade. This is where the Dalai Lama sat on his throne. 20,000 lamas were in residence, 20,000. In addition, there were Gur, Biebang, Sala, other monasteries in the area. Okay, here's our artist's rendition of it. See I wonder if our Hong Kong artist had seen pictures. I guess so, maybe. Shifu has a verse that he wrote to commemorate this experience, and the verse goes, 佛教密宗好喇嘛，专持密咒上释迦，糊涂科图法王主，达赖班禅正教化。The secret school of the Buddhist teaching is known as the sect of lamas, who exclusively practice secret mantras passed on by teachers. The Dharma host, who's also the king, is called the Hutuktu. Dalai Lama and Banchan Lamas administer and teach. All right. So there it is. Now, take a look. Here we go. Potala Palace looks like this. This is, you can see it's 13 stories tall, a building. It's in the center of Lhasa. See the tall mountains. Look at how tall those mountains are. Tibet is one of the highest in feet or meters civilizations in the world. It's called Potala. Where do we hear that? Puto. It's dedicated to Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara, Guanyin Pusat. So it has the same name as, Putoshan in the South China Sea. It's very colorful. That's one view. Let's take a look at another view. Here it is from behind. Lhasa is in the valley, so there's lots of greenery. This is looking from the back. There's another one. There's a website that I'm going to take you to that has a lot of information. The monks live here. It's the Red Palace, the White Palace. There's the ticket counter, in case you want to know. The Tanka storehouse. Tankas are the paintings, art treasures. So this is, here we are. Okay, here's the Potala Palace. It's a fortress. It was built in the 17th century. 1645 was when it began. It's a World Heritage Site. There are 1,000 rooms there, and it is, let's see here, it's called the Red Hill. This was the 1949 is one of the earliest surviving photos. This is the bedroom of His Holiness. So typical color scheme for Tibetan Buddhism, extremely colorful. There we are. So way up high, and this is one of the best websites. I'll put that in the chat box in case anybody wants to look, see here, in case anybody wants to do some more reading about it. That's a fine website describing a lot of the history, attractions, unique architecture, the red, the white palace, the town below, times to visit, how to get there, etc. So that's Potala Palace. Now, for the purpose of our story, Master Empty Cloud walked there on foot. And he said, so this is from his Nianpu. So this is the more details from which Master Hua extracted the excerpts that went into our book. So he crossed the rivers. It's the capital of Xizang, of Tibet. So we got this Jianyu. Let's see here. Brilliant. It's just imposing architecture. Let's see here. There are 3 big monasteries there with tens of thousands of monks. He said, I found it really hard to communicate with people because he spoke Hunan dialect Chinese. So he went into Bao, and that's the purpose of the pilgrim, to travel's spiritual journey. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, he mentions the Panchen Lama. Last week I showed folks the current Panchen Lama. Let's see here. Was that? Yeah. This is the current Panchen Lama. A fine teacher, one of the vice chairs of the Buddhist Association of China. And he says, walking through Tibet took a year. So 12 months of Master Empty Cloud's life passed crossing these mountains. He, let's see here, crossed the rivers. He said many days he didn't see a single person, just walking solitarily through the mountains. He says the birds and the beasts up that high are very different from those that you encounter at lower altitudes. And the customs are very, very different. He said that the Sangha there lives by different precepts. He says they don't follow the Buddha's precepts. They eat a lot of beef and mutton. They wear red and yellow clothing, and there's lots of sectarian differences among the various groups. He said, when I think about it, he said my tears would just fall unexpectedly. He would find himself sorrowful at the state of the Dharma. So he made it back to Lhasa for the New Year's. So then he goes on. Let's see. We're at our next chapter. And let's see here. I'm going to close this one and pick up this one. Oh, hold on. This is what I want. Right there. Okay, got it. Here we are. Crossing the Himalayas. So this is episode number 86, if anybody's keeping track. He is 50 years old. It's now 1889. It's the 19th century. And it's the 15th year of the Guangxu Emperor of China. So he says, 己丑50岁，公不欲流藏，开春南行，经拉嘎亚东，不丹越崇山峻岭，或称丛岭，或称雪山。有诗云：何物横天际，晴空入望中。这般因世界，无意玉玲珑。之句。至杨府城，朝佛古迹，至蒙家。1889, Master was 50 years of age. He didn't want to stay in Tibet. During the first days of spring, he began traveling south. He passed through Ge, Yadong, and then Bhutan, crossing the precipitous Congling mountain range, otherwise known as the Himalayas, the snowy mountains. He composed the following verse en route. What stretches to the far reaches of the horizon? Seen under the clear sky, this crystalline world differs not from resplendent jade. He reached the city of Yangfu, visited the ancient Buddhist shrines, and went on to Bengal, which is currently Bangladesh. Right? Yes. Right. Here he is, going over the Himalayas. This guy has tough bones. I tell you, he bows every 3 steps for 3,000 miles, nearly dies, goes to the mountains of China, and then says, not enough, I need to go to the mountains of Tibet. So he keeps on walking. Here's Shifu's verse, 喜马拉雅大雪山，世界第一高处天，探险悬家难窥测，不思意境引金贤. The great and lofty snowy mountains, known as the Himalayas, in this world they are the tallest, pushing up into the heavens. Even for expert explorers, they're hard to envision. And there he remains, and yet hidden, in inconceivable state, is the golden immortal, the Buddha himself. So he is just touring, right? He's a tourist now, he's a pilgrim. But through his eyes now, having endured what he endured for the sake of the Dharma, he sees the principle behind the specifics. So you're looking at tall mountains, he's seeing the face of the Buddha. Okay. What are we looking at? Here we go. What is this? That is Lhasa. Here is the Potala Palace, right there. Okay, Potala Palace. You can see this is the city of Lhasa, the administrative capital of Tibet. Now, where are we going to go? We're going to zoom out. Okay, he walked all the way there. Now it's spring, which is to say the time the passes are navigable, you can navigate. He's going down here to Bhutan on his way to Burma. He has to go through Bangladesh to get to current Myanmar. So this is where he is in our first episode. Now he's walking through Bhutan. Took him a year to get down to Myanmar. Okay, he's going to Rangoon, known as Yangan now. Change the name. Oops. Allow. Okay. No, there we go. Okay. This is his destination, down here at the bottom of Burma, and he's trekking all the way down. This is the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka. Okay, known as Bengal back then. Okay, everybody kind of got a sense of the geography for our pilgrim. He started over here, outside. This is where he started. This is Putoshan, where the cursor is, and he bowed all the way out here to Shanxi, and then he walked all the way here, all the way there. It's reminiscent of who? Reminiscent of Master Xuanzang, the Tang Dynasty pilgrim. So, there we go. Okay, moving on. 87, Yangguang Chao Dajinta, 50 years old. Are we ready? Here we go. 渡西兰朝圣地后，即复传至缅甸，超大金塔。此塔在佛教历史上占重要地位，世界各国闻名，佛教徒朝礼仪者颇多。至摩罗缅记，let's see here， 至摩罗缅记地里。有一巨石之旗，传为木莲尊者安置，朝礼者以慎重。Okay, everybody follow that in my broken Chinese reading. After visiting the holy places on his way across Sri Lanka, the master took a boat to Burma to visit the great golden stupa, Shwedagon Pagoda. This particular stupa holds a very important place in Buddhist history. Many Buddhists in various countries worldwide have heard about it and have made a pilgrimage to see it. Arriving at Jidili in Molomian, in Myanmar, the master saw a very strange boulder which legends say was placed there by the Buddhist disciple Madhyayana. Many other people made pilgrimages to this spot. There we are, Dajinta. Okay. There it is. Radiant. Shifu says, 仰光世称佛教国，巍巍金塔触壁空，各国教徒齐顶礼，香花供养拜大雄。The Buddhist city of Yangon is praised by the people of various lands. The golden stupa is lofty. It towers into the azure sky. Pilgrims from many countries come and pay respects to the shrine. With flowers and incense as offerings, they bow to the valiant Buddha. Okay, now our teacher, Master Hua, also visited Burma as a young monk. So here on my desktop is a picture of Shwedagon from 1850, some. Here is, let's see, that's the golden rock. We don't want that, we want this. Here we go. Okay, this is a panorama. Let's step the other way. Let's go here. All right. There we are. How about that? This is a remarkable structure that dominates the skyline of the city of Rangoon, called Yangon. And the Burmese, the way they do their Buddhism, here is the original that we saw. No other structure in the city is allowed to be taller than the pagoda. That's their way of honoring the Buddha. So here's a marketplace view, and you can see the skyline of Rangoon has this as the tallest peak. It's a spectacular golden structure. Different levels, and let's see, what have we got here? Here are British soldiers taking off their boots before they approach it. It's been there for so many hundreds of years that political dynasties have come and gone. People, strong men come and defeat the city, but they don't, they limit the access to the Golden Pagoda, but it survives, whereas the strong men go away, come and go. It's got such an incredible history to it. Now this is what it looks like up on the second level. This is a panorama. You have to climb up through one of the various gates, and then you can see here. Yeah, this is, if you're a monk or a nun and you're allowed to get up this high, or a layperson, this is the second level. This was the level where our group from DRBA did 3 steps, 1 bow. We were there in 1983 and circled. People were pleased to see Westerners. Let's see, is this? That's what it's like on the upper level. 3 steps, 1 bow was not a common way of worship, but you can see there's so many pilgrims who come from the world that it's people are happy to find other kinds of worship. So here is an unusual photo. This is President Barack Obama bathing the Buddha at one of the lower levels. This is President Obama making his visit to Burma, and they invited him to bathe the Buddha. There he is. So now, let's take a look. I want this one here, please. Here we go. Spelled S-H-W-E, Shui Dagan Pagoda, in Burmese. There are said to be 4 previous Buddhas, Shulidza relics, are there enshrined inside the stupa. Krakochanda's staff, Kanaka Muni's water filter, Kashyapa Buddha's robe, and 8 strands of hair from our Buddha are there. It's 367 feet tall, 560 feet above sea level. The zoning regulations say you can only build you can't build above it. There's a legend that says it was built 2,500 years ago while the Buddha was still alive. Okay, that's how the story goes. The Buddha gave 8 strands of his hair to the merchants who put them there. The first mention of the pagoda was in 724 of the Common Era. Let's see here. It's in the 1st century. One of the kings talked about it. There were earthquakes which damaged it, but it keeps getting rebuilt. Here it is in the 1890s, right? It's just absolutely a remarkable structure by any standard. Let's see here. And it's covered in gold, genuine gold plates. There are various times that Burma has been invaded. So the invaders make off with the bells for some reason. One of the biggest of the bells was stolen, but when the army that stole it tried to cross the river, the bell fell into the river and they couldn't dig it out. So Of course, the Burmese said, the bell doesn't want to leave. So then a second, 2 centuries later, another invading army pillaged the Dajinta and stole the bell, and it didn't leave. They couldn't get it out. It met the same fate, fell into the river, and they tried to recover it, and they couldn't. So only after the invaders gave up did the local people pull the bell out of the river and put it back in the pagoda. So clearly the Dharma protectors have opinions about how much you can steal from the golden pagoda. So people take off their shoes. It's still going on. There are still protests around the Dajinta. And yeah. So I've told the story before about our visit to the Great Golden Pagoda, and after we finished our 3 steps, 1 bow, we were resting in the shade. We'd gone and made a circle, and this very large European monk in a Theravada robe came up and told us that the only proper way to recite the Great Compassion Mantra was in the original Sanskrit. And he told us that we shouldn't recite it in Chinese, that was useless. And we thanked him for his opinion and continued to recite it in Chinese. So it is truly a global spot for Buddhism in the world. All kinds of folks are there. Okay, now we want to go to the other here we go, place that Master Empty Cloud visited, which is this sacred site. This is the Golden Rock, which is in Mandalay, they say. It's supposed to have been set up during the Buddha's lifetime, and it's a strand of the Buddha's hair keeps this rock from falling down. When you look at it, the way it's balanced, it should have fallen over, but they say magically one strand of the Buddha's hair keeps it from falling. And there's all kinds of teachings about this remarkable Buddhist site, such as only men are allowed to add to the gold. Women are not allowed on the bridge to go to reach it. So that's consistent more with Burmese culture than it is with Buddha Dharma, but that's the story they tell. And here it's called Kyak Tio Pagoda, the Golden Rock. Here it is. Located at the top of Mount Kyak Tio, the site of worship for 2,500 years. Here's another. This is a interesting. I'll put, if anybody wants to do more reading about it, I'll put this in the chat as well. Here we go. You can read about it on your own if you care to. Here it is. Okay. It's a Theravada Buddhist pilgrimage site. There is said to be another strand of the Buddha's hair and one that holds up the rock. So it's said to be built in the 6th century BC or BCE. It's a multi-level tower, 24 feet high. There's a tiny pagoda there, but it's on top of the boulder called the Golden Rock. I didn't see it. I haven't seen it. I heard about it. People talked about it and said if we had more time, we would have gone there. We didn't. It's supposed to be on the head of a hermit. It's a granite boulder covered in gold leaf, pasted on it by male worshippers. It's amazing because the rock shouldn't be balanced the way it is. It gives the impression that the rock is defying gravity and it could at any moment tumble down the mountain. It's pretty magical, according to people who have been there to see it. They say it's a single strand of the Buddha's hair that is keeping it up, keeping it from falling. And hundreds of thousands of Burmese visit every year. If you touch the rock with your hand, you get closer to the Buddha, they say. Let's see here. How is it possible? So the legend says that the Buddha visited the area during his lifetime, and a particularly devout hermit chose to live the celibate life, and the Buddha gave a strand of his hair to allow him to do that. His mother was a dragon, the mother of the hermit there. So they chose this place as the site for the miracle. Let's see here. It's 130 miles northeast of Rangoon. They tell you that if you do plan to go visit, you have to dress modestly, and you have to take your shoes and socks off, and only men can touch the rock. I don't think this is going to work in California, but this is Burma, so probably women can't touch the rock. All right. So this is more advice on how to get there. Notice how in Shifu's telling of the story, he says, let's see, let's see here. Let's see here. 世界各文明佛教历史上 here we go. Okay, let's see here. There, what I'm looking for was I guess it's in the Nyenpu, where he mentions that there is a gender bias on this particular site. Okay. Let's see. Weijin. Okay. So here is when, there we go. When we visited the Golden Pagoda, we also went to the city known as Pagan. And Pagan is a city of 1,000 stupas. Literally 1,000, you can count them. There was a Burmese king who was so taken by Buddhism that he emptied his treasury and built stupas. And there's both Ta and Miao. The stupas have relics of the Buddha. The Miao have Buddha images. So that's the difference between a stupa and a pagoda. We learned it there. And we found a layman, a Burmese layman, and you can tell the style because they wear skirts, sarongs, and they smoke cheroots, right? C-H-E-R-O-O-T-S. A cheroot is a cigar. And Burmese layman, absolutely, it's totally cool to smoke a cheroot and to hang out in the stupas and the temples in Pagan. We heard lots of amazing, amazing stories, including this old layman took us up to the second floor. We asked whether there was any worship of bodhisattvas. Could there be any stupa dedicated to anybody but the Buddha? And this layman laughed, and he took us in an ox cart. He said, "This is how you travel." He said, "You definitely want to ride, don't walk." So we got in the ox cart, and the ox pulled us over to what was called the Ananda Stupa. And he took us in, and inside was an image of Guanyin Bodhisattva. There it was. And he said, "Oh yes," he said, "this is the land of the Theravada." He said, "There is only Theravada sutras here. We only study the Pali language." He said, "However, everybody knows Guanyin," he says, and everybody bows to Guanyin. So Guanyin Bodhisattva is universal. And there's something in the human heart that when we think of compassion, it's in the shape of a woman, compassionate Avalokiteshvara. So the old layman said, he said, "My way," he said, "I choose to live here in this Buddhist city of Pagan in Burma." He says, "I look at places like even Rangoon and places like Bangkok and places like, of course, Shanghai and Guangzhou, Taipei." He says, "People have forgotten the important part about being alive in a human body." He says, "The idea that somehow our lives are supposed to be passed chasing after wealth, buying fancy cars, catching up on the latest in technology." He says, "All I need," he said, "what I do with my money, I sponsor young men to join the Sangha." He says, "That's what I do." He said, "My pace of my life is the speed of an ox cart." He says, "I have a cigar to smoke, I have food to eat, I can worship the Buddha anytime I choose. Any wealth that I have, I want young men to be able to leave home. That's my merit," he says. "Next life, I will come right back to this city. Life is good." He said, "Are you telling me I'm supposed to go faster and worry and my life gets shortened? How many years of life do you lose worrying about profit? Afraid that your stocks are going to drop." He said, "Afraid that you might not catch the latest movie." He says, "That's insanity. I don't need that. I don't think anybody does. I think that's a life wasted." So we were, very impressed by the pace of life in Burma, and particularly in the Buddhist city called Pagan. He said the University of Rangoon, the architecture department, analyzed the mortar used to build these 1,000 stupas that has lasted 1,000 years. He said they couldn't quite do it. There was something special about the formula that the ancient Buddhist architects used and the builders used to build these incredible stupas and pagodas. He said this is, they can't quite duplicate it. He said they're not quite sure what they used to put this, to put these buildings together. This is the city of Pagan. The Buddhist city of 1,000 stupas. There it is. You can see them here, covering the plain. So interesting, right? This point of view. Here it is. This is the city. These are the three wonderful Buddhist sites of Burma, known as Myanmar now. Is the Great Golden Pagoda, the Golden Rock, and the city of Pagan. So, it's worth thinking. Is he right? this old gentleman who said that what's the point, right? What's the point of chasing after wealth when in the end you can't take any of it with you? And there we are. This is the picture. This is what it looks like in the city of Pagan. 1,000 stupas. One of them containing a Guanyin Bodhisattva. So, yeah, that was certainly, to my mind, that was a question worth asking. And we were hosted by a young monk who told us, it was very interesting, he was made abbot of 6 different monasteries. He was considered the next generation. I've forgotten his name. And he invited us to receive offerings from the laity, and we said, well, we don't eat meat. He said, that's all right, we'll take care of you. He said, well, you're covered, don't worry. And so we sat in these very ornate seats with a big table in front of us, and there were 5 of us from City of 10,000 Buddhas, 1983, and there was our young host. And he said, he gave a signal, and it was time for the laity to come and make their offerings. And so they came, and they covered the top of the table with dishes, and then the next layer covered those first layer, and then a third layer of dishes of food, cooked food, set out on the tabletop. And so he said, now, our job is to receive the offerings. If I counted, there were probably 120 dishes in 3 layers stacked up on top of each other. And of course, lots of fish and lots of meat and lots of poultry and such. And he said, what we have to do is touch every dish. So he said, please come and help me. So the monks, we uncrossed our legs, went down and touched every dish, just touching it with our hand to accept the offering. We were busy tapping, touching this, touching. And he said, okay, now, he said, we come back, and he said, now you can take, he said, I'll show you which ones have no meat. And he said, pick those. And then he said, you take your food in your bowl. So we put it in our Theravada alms bowl. And he gave a signal, and he said, and now the laity eat the rest. And sure enough, the crowd of lay people came and took all the dishes back. And he said, from their point of view, once a monk touches the dish and accepts it, it becomes sacred food. And now they get all the blessings from the monks having touched the dish. And the other memory, it was just amazing the way Burmese monks are treated by their laity. And it was the case of quantity over quality, for sure. The important thing was make as much offerings as possible to the monks. Once the monks touch the dishes, it becomes sacred food. So the other interesting part of the conversation with the young monk in Burma, in Pagan, for lunch was, he said, now, he says, I know you all come from City of 10,000 Buddhas. He said, we know about your teacher. He said, what secret method does he give you to teach? He says, you can tell me, I'm a monk. I'm a Sangha member. We said, oh, actually, Shifu doesn't pass on secret dharmas. You know what he tells us is his best method of cultivation. He says, no thoughts of fighting, no greed. We don't allow seeking thoughts. No selfishness, no thoughts of personal benefit, and no dishonesty. That's our method. And there was a pause. And he said, No, come on. He says, I know you have the real stuff. You can tell me. He says, I've done it all. He says, I've done anti-gravity tanks. I've meditated underwater. He says, I've had all the transmissions. I've traveled to Tibet. I've got every secret Dharma. I don't have your Dharma. He said, you can tell me. What is it? He said, honestly, it's called the Six Guidelines. It's Master Hua's signature Dharma. And he goes, I guess you don't trust me, right? Well, that's not surprising. We don't know each other long enough. He says, but one of these days you'll tell me what you really cultivate, you know? He wouldn't accept the truth that Master Hua actually did transmit Liu Da Zongzhi, the Six Guidelines. And Shifu told us when he passed it on, he said, you know, most people, he says, they don't accept it. He says, the smart ones pass me right by. My method, it just seems too stupid, too dumb. He said, but this is the fast road to Buddhahood. If you can really do it, he said, you hold the precepts on the ground of the mind. He said, sounds like nothing. The smart ones pass me right by. Well, our Burmese monk considered he was too smart for the Six Guidelines. Definitely one of those. So, all right. That's my encounter with the Golden Stupa in Yangon, being told that the Great Compassion mantra in Chinese doesn't work, it has to be in Sanskrit, and that the Six Guidelines are not secret enough for monks who have studied every method. So interesting, right? That's our story. So next week, Master Empty Cloud continues back south, going through Burma and onto Malaysia. Ultimately, he goes to Bingcheng, but we're not quite there yet. So that's more next week. Thank you for joining. I'm sorry about the time change. Hope that everybody will get coordinated. We'll all be back here at the right time. If you folks know somebody who missed today, they're going to tune in about 3 minutes. They're going to say, where was everybody, right? Let them know that daylight savings has happened. We ready to dedicate merit? We can use our tune here. Please send out a wish. To the Buddhas and also bow to our teacher. Okay, here we go. Wait a sec here. Okay. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Okay, that's all for us for today. See you all next week. Don't miss the time. 6:30 in California, 12:30 here in Australia, 10:30 in China. Amin Tofo. Bye now, everybody.